Hey class, this is solid waste disposal. There's a lot going on here. Solid waste is any discarded material that is not a liquid or a gas. It is generated in domestic, industrial, and business and agricultural sectors. It's most often disposed of in landfills, which we'll discuss. Landfills can contaminate groundwater and release harmful gases, but there are some things we can do to prevent that from happening. Electronic waste, or e-waste, is composed of discarded electronic devices, including televisions, cell phones, and computers. A sanitary municipal landfill consists of a bottom liner of plastic or clay, ideally both, a stormwater collection system, a leachate collection system, a cap, and a methane collector system. So we'll need to know this technology well. Okay. Factors that in landfill decomposition include the composition of the trash and conditions needed for microbial decomposition of waste. So not everything decomposes as you might expect. Solid waste can also be disposed of through incineration, as you might expect. There are problems with that. Where waste is burned at high temperatures, this method significantly reduces the volume of solid waste, but releases air pollutants. I wonder if you can guess which ones. At least nitric oxides, right? Some items may not are not accepted in sanitary landfills and may be disposed of illegally, leading to environmental problems. One example is used rubber tires, which, when left in piles, can become breeding grounds for mosquitoes that spread disease. And some countries dispose of their waste by dumping it into the ocean. This practice, along with other sources of plastic, has led to large floating islands of trash in oceans. Additionally, wildlife can become entangled in the waste as well as ingested. So, there's a lot going on here. Municipal solid waste. All right, that's MSW. You see that often. Solid waste from cities. That's a household businesses, schools, etc. Also known as just trash, litter, garbage, or refuse. Right. Less common in the United States, but refuse is commonly used in other countries. Waste stream refers to the flow of solid waste to recycling centers, landfills, or trash incineration sites. And you'll often see charts like this, which include the percentage of solid waste, trash, refuge, all that. Okay, so here 27% of waste is paper. We have wood, yard trimmings, food, other plastics, metals, and glass. Okay, so roughly about a third of all of this is paper, 2/3 of this are organics, which is compostable, all right, which can be good. E-waste, not very compostable. Old computers, TVs, iPhones, tablets, things like that. Only 2% of municipal solid waste, but considered hazardous waste due to metals like cadmium, lead, mercury, and PBDEs, which are fireproofing chemicals. All right, so you might recall that from our biomagnification lesson. These may as well also be endocrine disruptors, as well as mercury when it becomes methyl mercury. All right, and lead. So we need technology in our landfills to ensure that this waste does not leak into our groundwater. As here, can leach endocrine disrupting chemicals out of landfills if thrown away with regular municipal solid waste. So this should be disposed of at separate facilities that actually recycle these parts here. So what does this technology look like? The sanitary landfill, the APES lingo for landfills, right? The sanitary landfill, or where developed nations dispose of trash. It's different than dumps, which are areas where we just simply dump our trash without the features below. So dumps are just holes in the ground. Sanitary landfills are much more complex than that. So we need a clay layer or a plastic bottom liner, or ideally both, okay? This will prevent the leaching of toxic chemicals into our groundwater and our aquifer. Okay, so we want to prevent that from happening. We also have a clay cap here as well that also prevents infiltration of surface water into here as well. All right, so we definitely do not want that. So leachate collection system. We can't expect there to be no leachate, which would be, again, water mixed with whatever harmful materials we do not want. In this case, PCBs, mercury, which with bacteria and waters help turns into methyl mercury, which is a teratogen and an endocrine disruptor. Mercury, cadmium, all toxic metals. We have at the bottom of the landfill. We have a collection system that collects liquids as they flow down. And these liquids get sent back up and they are treated and sent to further processing. So this prevents anything from even reaching our clay cap or plastic cap if possible, which is very smart, right? Methane recovery system. What we do know is that there is aerobic digestion, but also anaerobic digestion occurring. And anaerobic digestion also creates methane as a byproduct. And so we don't want anything exploding, of course, right? So we want some way to relieve pressure from methane produced from the decomposition of some of these materials. And so we can have methane recovery systems, which we then use to generate electricity or heat buildings. And rather than just letting this escape into the atmosphere where it can be a really harmful greenhouse gas. Our clay cap. It's a clay soil mixture used to cover the landfill. Once it's full, it keeps out animals, keeps the smell in, and allows vegetation to regrow on top. So actually many parks, especially in urban areas, New York City has a few, where underneath the parks are old landfills. Pretty interesting stuff. Low rates of decomposition, because what we're doing is we're squishing all of this stuff together. So there's very low oxygen, moisture, and organic material combined together, right? So very little aerobic digestion occurring, right, or decomposition. Since these three factors are rarely present together in landfills, little decomposition occurs, and landfills typically remain about the same size as when they are filled. It's really interesting. I used to have a little book that had a steak that was 30 or 40 years old. Sorry, I might have said 30 or 40 because I'm looking at that right here, but several years old that hadn't been decomposed at all because there's no oxygen to decompose to help decompose this, right? 40-year-old newspaper found in the landfill. Nixon pledges his and Ike's aides to McCarthy, right? Things don't decompose here, so they're going to stick around for quite a bit. How long does it take trash to decompose? Well, 2 months for maybe an apple, 50 years for a can, 10 to 20 years for a trash bag, 50 years for foam plastic. Some things just don't decompose at all. But this is just an interesting chart. Please take a look at this. Microfilament fishing line. Scary stuff because I like fishing, but this is 600 years. 600 years. So things that should not go in a landfill. Hazardous waste, antifreeze, motor oil, cleaners, electronics, and car batteries. All of these can have harmful chemicals and heavy metals. And other metals like copper and aluminum, let's recycle these. That's just smart to do as well. Old tires, they're often left in large piles that hold standing water, ideal for mosquito breeding. All right, so we need proper disposal of these guys right here. Things that should be landfilled, cardboard, food wrappers that have too much food residue and can't be recycled. You can't just recycle pizza boxes that are covered in cheese, right? Rubber, plastic films, and wraps, and styrofoam, food, yard waste, and paper can go in the landfills, but should be recycled and or composted, okay? What are the problems? Landfills have environmental impacts like groundwater contamination and the release of greenhouse gases. All right, this might not come as a surprise to some of you, but might be surprising to others. All right, groundwater can be contaminated, like I said, with heavy metals like lead and mercury, acids, medications, which can be our endocrine disruptors, bacteria, if leachate leaks through the lining into the soil and groundwater beneath. We're also having greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide in cases of aerobic digestion, methane in terms of anaerobic digestion, because the landfill is just squished down together, so there's compact. There's not much oxygen to help with aerobic digestion, right? And release from landfills due to decomposition both contribute tremendously to global warming and climate change. And so, who wants to live here? No one. No one wants to live next to a landfill. We call them NIMBYs, not in my backyard. So it's a paradox. We need places to put all of our trash, but nobody wants this landfill in their backyard. The idea that communities don't want landfills near them for, again, a number of reasons. Smell, the site. We don't want trash trucks driving around all the time, right? Can attract animals like rats and crows. Groundwater contamination concerns can be very serious, and landfills should be located far from a river and streams and neighborhoods to avoid water contamination, groundwater contamination, these leachates, right? Leachates. So say that out loud, leachate, right? It's water that contains all the harmful stuff that we really just don't want to be drinking or ingesting. And so groundwater flows downhill towards the ocean, and if we don't properly line this with plastic, clay, or both, and we don't have a leachate collection system, right? This is a sanitary landfill. This will happen, right? If we just have a dump with nothing underneath, this most certainly will happen. Okay. Landfills are often placed near low income and minority communities that don't have the resources or political power and capital to fight against these decisions. And there's a whole essence of environmental racism going on along with this right here, right? In a just world, we shouldn't see this disproportionately distributed to poor communities and communities of color, right? So, waste incineration and ocean dumping. Waste can be incinerated or burned to reduce volume that needs to be landfilled. Since most waste, paper, plastic, food, equals hydrogen, carbon, and oxygen, it easily combusts at high temperatures. So it makes a lot of sense. And this can reduce the volume of our trash by 90%. And so we're running out of room in theory, right? Where we put our trash. But it also releases carbon dioxide and other air pollutants. Burning of anything will release nitric oxide, but we'll also get particulate matter and sulfur dioxides or sulfur oxides as well. What do we do with this ash? Well, ash may also contain toxic metals, lead, mercury, cadmium, and is stored in ash ponds and then taken to special landfills. And the toxic metals, again, same as always, can leach out of what we call storage ponds. Just like we have coal ash ponds, we also have trash ash ponds. All right, and these storage ponds can, if they're not properly lined, all this material can leach into our groundwater or just be released into our atmosphere through evaporation, right? Or through burning and attaching to particulate matter. But it's interesting. We can generate electricity from the burning of trash. We talked about this briefly. So that's one benefit. So not everything is perfect. So environmental science will need to know several consequences and possibly some benefits. Now, illegal ocean dumping occurs in some countries with few environmental regulations that lack enforcement. It leads to this. The plastic will collect in large floating garbage patches in the ocean, typically in gyres, areas where the ocean circulates in a circle, right? And we'll see all the trash collect here. This can be a serious problem. It can suffocate animals. Many ocean birds and other species ingest this stuff to the point where they can't fly, swim, or they'll even starve because it will clog their digestive tracts. All right, so it's a lot of stuff here. We have the municipal solid waste stream composition for the United States. Okay, propose a solution the federal government could enact that would reduce the volume. Now, keyword here is volume of waste. So that's incineration. We can incinerate our waste and reduce the volume by 90%. All right, entering landfills by at least 15%. Well, hey, that's 90%. That's a big deal. Evidence from the graph above to support your proposed solution. Well, what of these materials can be incinerated? Paper, food products especially. That would account for 27 plus, 14%. So that's 41.6% of our material that can be incinerated, and add to this other organics and wood. All of this stuff can be burned and incinerated, right? We can also propose recycling, much more heavy recycling by at least, again, 15%. So we got plastics and metals right there. Aluminum, we don't want to send aluminum, and we don't want to send a certain plastic. So right here, this adds up to above 15%. So it's asking you to use evidence. So it's asking you to tally these. So make sure you don't skimp out on the details if they're being asked for. Okay, and there you go. That is it.